Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? It seems like it's been a while since I've been here. I guess that's because my good friends here have been down at this studio for, I believe, a little bit over a week. They had some remodeling to do, and I think they've done a very good job, by the way. So here we are. And just in case, for those of you out there that don't know, this is the Concerned Forum. And let me adjust my mic on the tie here. And I am your host, Robert Gumbs. Although some people call me Bob, which is fine. And the purpose of the Concerned Forum is essentially to enlighten, to inform, to tell the truth. Now, this has been a very, how should I say, it's been a rough, how long has he been in there? 8 months with Donald Trump in the White House. Hell, every day with Donald Trump in the White House is cataclysmic, just about. But in particular, these last 2 or 3 days. But let's take it from the top. We have several extremely important items. And when I say extremely important, I'm talking about important in the sense that it could have serious deleterious effects on this country of ours. A clear and present danger, as they would say, if you're going to speak U.S. constitutionalese. First of all, climate change. Now, what really angers me is the fact that you have Donald Trump. This guy that brags about the great schools that he's gone to. Yet, people will get on my case because they say I'm being disrespectful to the president. No, I'm not being disrespectful to the office. To the man, yes. That's only because I practically grew up with this guy and his family as a native New Yorker. Trump essentially it spreads this filthy rumor that, there's no such thing as climate change. This is a hoax. Who did he say was a hoax by? The Chinese government or some governments of the Southern Hemisphere to squeeze more money out of the Northern Hemisphere. And, that sounds so damn stupid and absolutely pathetic. When you have over 95% of the world's climate scientists telling you, hey, we have a problem here. We need to deal with it. And you choose to ignore it. That means that you're stupid. Now, I know some people will take offense at what they will feel is my brash way of putting things. And quite frankly, I don't really give a damn. Because day by day, our time grows short. And we have the rest of our lives that we need to keep up with. We have the lives of our children, of our grandchildren, of our parents, of our friends. All these many people that are in our circle of life. And for any of us to sit around and depend on an ignorant buffoon and his ignorant followers, I think that that's a serious mistake. And it's time that we stop this nonsense. It's like in the Senate where they'll stand up and they'll say, I wish to disagree with my great and good friend and colleague from the state of Colorado or what have you. I understand why people talk that way. And at a time when you have that kind of country, all right, where you have people that respond to the idea of speaking calmly and intelligently to folks who are in opposition to them, hey, that's cool, right? But we're not living in that time. Remember, this is the nation that elected to the highest office in the land a guy that stands up at his own, standing up at his own rally and makes fun of a handicapped gentleman. I think once you go that low, all right, then you have no room to criticize how other people talk about, you and your standard bearer. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. But once again, like I said, I respect the office. But this bitch is about climate change, as I was saying. This has been confirmed by the majority of the world's scientists. I could tell you, it's been confirmed by the American military. At the Pentagon, no one is running for office, okay? There's no secret agenda. And I was reading about climate change back in the mid-'80s. Okay, when did I get there? End of 82. Right. So this whole business about this being some kind of fraudulent scheme is absolute nonsense. And if you've ever gone to the doctor, if you have children, and you have kept up, with their shot record, their vaccinations, if you've done any of that, if you took a shot yourself to, fight the flu or whatever, then what that means is that you are an ass and a hypocrite. The reason for that, never get into name calling without justification, okay? That makes you stupid. But for you to have done those things that I just said and then talk about climate change is fake science, that makes you a phony and it makes you a dummy. Because what you're doing and what you're saying by your actions happen to be that, oh, well, I like this type of science, but that science over there dealing with climate change, I don't like that. Listen, man, science, you can't pick and choose, okay? It's not a supermarket, right? Either it's real or it's not real. And with over 95% of the scientists who deal in climate change telling you that it's real, hey, pal, it's real. Deal with it. Now, it's a funny thing. Trump has properties in Europe, in Northern Europe. What was it, Scotland, golf course, or whatever. He goes along with the precautions that are taken to protect, land, property, what have you, like in Scotland, for example. So why, when it comes to talking about the United States, climate change is a fake? See, this is the madness that is really destroying this country. I wonder sometimes what the hell has happened to our public education in this country. Not just talking about the whole racial thing, I'm just talking about in general. Because I can guarantee you, back in the 70s, nobody would have carried on about climate change being a fake. It's mind-boggling. It really is. And people need to wake the hell up. They truly do. If I tell you something, I expect you to listen to me. If I have the facts to back it up. If I don't have the facts to back it up, it's my opinion. And, opinions are like what? Everyone has one. But when I come to you with straight scientific fact, you have an obligation to listen to what I say. At the most, find out, okay, these are said to be the facts. Let me examine it and find out why. See, that's how rational human beings deal with a problem, which there again shows that our president may not qualify as a rational human being. What about the North Korean situation? Why is it that Donald Trump feels that he has to push this guy in North Korea? Why does he feel it's necessary for him to push this man into a corner? I mean, what is up with that? Why? Now, the plain truth of the matter is that, generally speaking, North Korea, really, what has it done to the United States that we feel we have to keep pushing this guy and, keep threatening him? Why? What's the purpose? I need somebody to explain that to me. What is it, Donald Trump? Why do you keep, I don't know, do you want this guy to just snap out and start sending nuke missiles downrange? Is that what you want? Because I guarantee you, if you keep pushing this guy the way you've been pushing, that's exactly what's going to happen. Trump seems to have this idea that God Almighty wants him to be king of the planet. I don't think that's the case, quite frankly. I don't think the Creator said, well, I'm going to let Donald Trump be our next Messiah. I don't think that's what the Creator has in mind, frankly. Now, of course, there are many of you out there that are, either not religious or you don't follow the whole concept of, a God. What is it? Anthropomorphic, or something along those lines, and that's cool. But just in the course of general conversation, I don't believe that, because I do happen to share a belief in the Creator. I don't necessarily get into the whole Trinity thing. I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, and I guess you could say that I was raised, the school I went to, it was a predominantly black and Hispanic Roman Catholic school, from the first grade all the way up until they had one freshman high school class there, ninth grade class, and heavy on the Catholic religion, saying your Hail Marys and what have you, but there was a certain amount of academic intelligence that you could also pick up from my school, which was, by the way, St. Thomas the Apostle in West Harlem. And the folks who were there, we had the, the priest, I forgot their order, but we had the priest and we had the monks, Irish Christian brothers, and we had the nuns, bring on the nuns, and they were cool people. My favorite was a tall Irish lady, and she had a beautiful Irish accent. Sister Mary St. Raphael, I'll never forget her. And damn, could she hit. I tell you, tall, slender woman. But she had a right you wouldn't believe. Because at that time, Catholic school was really into, corporal punishment. And I loved her, though. I truly did. She was good people. That was the Catholic Church's biggest mistake. It's still their biggest mistake. They don't give women in the church enough of a, how should I put it, controlling or supervisory role in the church. I think that's one of the reasons why, unfortunately, the church has had so much problem. At least, I'm going to talk about here in America. So many problems with child abuse, with priests and young boys, and what have you, because the priests were basically always, Father O'Reilly was always above Sister Emma Jean, where you had the whole educational, system, when it worked well, like in St. Thomas the Apostle, even though the male priest was in charge, he always kind of backed up a little bit when the senior nun had something to say. And you will find, I will bet you $10 to Navy beans, that where you find situations, various parishes, where the nuns were basically put on an equal basis with the male, priest and monks, right? The problem with child sexual abuse among priests was like almost non-existent. Like I said, I'll bet money on that. Unfortunately, the women were not given that much of a control as I feel they should have been in the church. And it's still like that, unfortunately, to a large extent. Now, Pope Francis, I still call him the new guy, he has done a hell of a lot to improve that situation. But irregardless, I left the Catholic Church, and now I'm a practicing Unitarian. But of course, I still have a very soft spot, very warm spot for the Roman Catholic faith. And I didn't mean to digress, but I thought that that's something informative that the folks out there need to know and understand. We're talking about North Korea. We're talking about why Donald Trump consistently tries to upset and drive into a corner the let me take this thing off, the head of North Korea. It's like everything with this guy Trump, you know, he has to prove somehow that he is superior. You know, he has to prove, hey, I'm the alpha male, I'm the better man, you know. And see, games like that are fun when you're playing one-on-one basketball or something, or if you're doing a sparring match in martial arts, but they should not be played when we're talking about thermonuclear weapons. And I will tell you quite frankly, as a former intelligence technician, me myself, if I were the head of North Korea and Trump was, you know, coming at me the way that he's coming at the president leader of North Korea, I would probably hit him. To be quite frank about it, I would push the button. And see, that's what scares me, because one of the things in Intel that they teach you or try to teach you is to, you know, put yourself in the other guy's position. Donald has been constantly harassing this man. Now, hold on a second. Let's get something straight here. This man is, you know, he's he has the capacity to act like a real monster. Okay, I know that. I would not want to live in North Korea for an hour, for a half an hour, for a half a minute. Okay? No human being, or no, put it this way, people should not have to live the way that the North Korean people live. Now, that's my opinion. Now, because I feel that way, that doesn't mean that I have to harass the leader of that country until I drive this guy into, you know, sending missiles into Japan or Guam. See, that doesn't make any damn sense. And you have to you have to realize that America has never had any qualms about getting into bed with some very ugly customers. So that's not even an issue. You know, I don't want to hear this crap about, oh, well, you know, he hurts his own people, he starves his own people, they have secret jails and all that. Yeah, okay, and I don't live there. I don't want to live there. I hope to God I never have to live there or any place like it. But that's not the issue. There are places around the world where people live under governments that are just horrible. No two ways about it. But that does not give us the right to try and inflict nuclear war upon Southeast Asia and possibly the rest of the world. Inflict nuclear war on Asia and possibly the rest of the world. See, that's some of the nonsense that a lot of us need to get out of our heads. You know, you heard some dummy talking, oh, I don't blast North Korea back to the Stone Age. For what? And kill maybe, 10, 15 million people. For what? For what purpose? You know, you wouldn't want anybody to do that to your little hovel down there in red state Alabama or Mississippi, some friggin' where. What gets you so excited that you want to go and do it to somebody else? You know, where's the logic in that? What exercise in critical thinking causes you to reach that conclusion? See, that's the problem with this country. And I'm sorry, but putting Donald Trump in the White House, it's just made it worse. Okay? It has just made it worse. And for that, I fear. I truly do. Now, what do you think the folks in South Korea, meanwhile? Yeah, remember South Korea, our supposed allies? How do you think they feel knowing that they're going to be in the front, not only in the front in the front seats, they're actually going to be in the goddamn game? If anything happens between America and North Korea, you're talking about the capacity to wipe out millions of people in less than a day. Seriously. Because all those weapons that North Korea has, all that artillery, even their conventional stuff, not even talking about the nuclear, but just the conventional. You know, boom, Seoul, Korea is gone. You know, just like that. So I say again, or I question again, why is Donald Trump insistent upon pushing this guy in the corner? And the reason that I said earlier that if I was this guy in North Korea, I would go ahead and push my buttons and say the hell with it, is because you put somebody in a corner and then you keep poking at them. You know, it's just like the expression, you know, you put a rat in the corner, he's going to strike out. He's going to strike out at you. And that is the type of nonsense that we are doing with this gent in North Korea. What did Winston Churchill say? It's better to jaw than to war. In other words, it's better to talk. North Korea is not doing anything that's affecting this country right now that we can't handle. So I think that, yeah, basically reaching some type of agreement where we sit down and we talk, yeah, I think that's a better scenario than wiping out about 20 million folks. You know, hey, call me sentimental, but you know, I think that's a little bit better. Now, another issue is that, and this is what really bugs me, you know? It seems that we've elected a president that his whole thing is about dividing this country. And actually, it's worse than dividing it. It's like he's trying to balkanize it. And for you folks out there that might not be familiar with that term, balkanization, it's like in, Southeastern Europe, where you got the Bosnian Serbs and what's those other groups? The Serbs, the Bosnians, oh God. What used to be Yugoslavia, right? And what wound up happening after, quote unquote, the fall of the wall, all right, of communism, things basically went to hell in a handbasket. You had a guy named Tito. Now, Tito was a rough, tough, strong guy, and he was a communist, but he was not a Moscow type communist. And from time to time, as a matter of fact, I think he's the only one that ever really stood up to Stalin and was able to get away with it. Tito, Marshal Tito. He was a big hero also, from World War II, and his partisans fighting there in Eastern Europe against the Nazis. And what happened when he died, basically Yugoslavia, fell to pieces. The guy that was keeping it all together, boom, he's gone. So what happens, they revert back to the way they were before communism, or Soviet-style communism, was able to take over in Eastern Europe, especially Southeastern Europe, Serbia, Kosovo, all these different places and all these different groups of people. Because hell, you gotta remember, you even got Muslims, right? Turks, people, Turkish people, because that whole area had been ruled, like 1,000 years or so? It had been ruled by the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Ottoman Empire. So you got a whole bunch of different people, different religions, and when Tito died, everything fell apart. And see that's their problem. So you have little country here, little country there, blah 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 blah, and that's what they mean when they say balkanization. You have a whole bunch of little pieces, right? And one could easily get the impression that that's the kind of future that Donald Trump has planned for America. That we basically, break up. I don't know what. First, we divide ourselves in half, and then eventually we'll divide ourselves into quarters. And that, I guess that's the kind of future that he envisions for America. Which, of course, that's something that we have to pledge ourselves not to allow happen. But that seems to be the idea bouncing around inside the head of Donald Trump. And the hypocrisy of Trump and his people. Let me try and do this, and I'm going to try and be careful because I'm trying to put a bunch of different things together at the same time. Not because I want to, but because that's basically how it's rolling right now. Trump wants to jump up and down because you have a large bunch of black athletes, first in the NFL football, and apparently that's spreading into the NBA basketball. And he is basically what he's trying to say is, oh, well, these are rich, spoiled black guys making millions of dollars in this country because they can play a game. And they don't have the decency or the good grace to salute the flag. And see, the problem with Trump's logic and the logic of people who think like Trump, their problem is that they totally don't understand a damn thing. It makes no difference whether you have a $5 million contract, okay? It has nothing to do with it. Where the hell was this? In Houston or in Dallas? I forgot who the brother plays for. One of the big teams and one of the pro teams in Texas. Somehow he's driving a very nice car, and he's stopped by the police. And unfortunately, as what happens all too often in America, especially in certain places, the next thing he knows, a cop puts his weapon to the brother's head as if to say, hey, I don't give a damn who you are, who you're playing for. If you give me an excuse, I will splatter your brains inside this beautiful, expensive car that you're driving. So you see, the idea that some of these guys might be making millions of dollars a year, it has nothing to do with that. They're not taking the knee because they're protesting their lack of pay. They're not taking the knee because they want more money. They are taking the knee because they feel that it's not right for them to show obeisance to a flag when the ideals of that flag are not being lived up to. And there is nothing wrong with that. We are Americans. We are about protest. Once again, Mr. Trump proves that when he was in all these fancy schools, as he calls them, yes, I went to really great schools. Well, if he is not totally mental, then this would mean that he basically slept through class. I can see damn well he slept through the history class, because that's what this country is about. This country was born in protest. To be quite frank about it, that's what the hell we're here for. This is what we do in America. We protest. And we try to do it non-violently. But unfortunately, when you're talking about things that bring out great emotion, sometimes, people being human, we don't always stick to that. Like that little beef we had back in 1861 called, the Civil War. But see, the main point is, these guys, when they take the knee, they haven't disrespected anyone. They're not stealing anything. They're not saying, oh, well, I'm taking the knee and I'm going to keep the knee for the whole game. I'm not going to play. They're not doing none of that. They are just expressing their righteous indignation and anger at a country that basically makes these promises that, yeah, we're about certain things. Like the old Superman show, Truth, Justice, and the American Way. And we're not delivering. And see, that's what these men are saying. And once again, I repeat, there's nothing wrong with that. If you think that there's something wrong with that, then you need to check yourself into some place because you have problems. Don't boast to the world. You know, don't tell me, oh, well, if you think things are bad here, why don't you go overseas and see how really bad government is overseas? See how you are denied your freedom overseas. You keep complaining about what's, happening here in America. How would you like to live in China or in Russia? Well, the answer to that is no, I would not like to. I was not born in either one of those two countries. And I have no desire to live in either one of them. But that's not the issue. Because if you're going to tell me that, if you're going to tell me that America is so great because of our freedoms, and yet when I go to and I decide to practice that freedom, and you're going to yell and curse at me and call me all kinds of names, and the chief executive of the land is going to try to talk to my boss to have me fired, what the hell freedom are you talking about? See, that's another great problem that we have here in this country. This constant contradictory dialogue that we have. Number one, we don't have enough dialogue about the real issues that are hurting us as a nation. And number two, we're not talking about the problems that we have, because every time I try to talk about it, you're telling me, oh, well, there goes the black guy again. He's going to cry about slavery and race and all this other kind of stuff. So if I'm going to try and make any kind of headway in this situation, I need to do something that's dramatic, yet nonviolent. And I believe that those gentlemen taking the knee, I think it's perfect, quite frankly, because they're showing, hey, yo, Jack, we got problems here. But don't worry, we're not going to try and hurt you or cut your throat or anything like that. But we have issues here that you need to be aware of them if you're not aware, and they need to be spoken about. They need to be addressed. And once again, who the hell is Donald Trump to question anyone's patriotism? I know I've probably mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. I'm going to damn well keep on mentioning it. This is the guy during the height of Vietnam that when I was out at Fort Dix, the first time I was in the service at 17 years of age, preparing to go into combat for my country, this guy was running up and down the village here in Manhattan trying to figure out how the hell he was going to avoid catching VD, venereal disease. See, that's something else that needs to be addressed. Now, I can understand, or I can try to understand, why it is some working class white men with no college voted for Trump. I have a hard time trying to understand why they're still with him, since this guy has proven what type of person he is. Everything that Republicans, and you still have some decent Republicans out there. I grew up in a Republican family, by the way, so I don't, I know about the Republican Party. But every decent Republican told you, don't vote for this guy Trump. Don't let him get the nomination because he is not a good candidate and he would make a lousy president. He would make a dangerous president. Republicans told you that. Democrats told you that. Independents told you that. And you refuse to listen. Now, I have some real big problems with that because we are not talking. And see, this is something else. We have to disabuse ourselves of this notion that this is politics. This is not politics. Okay? This is not politics. You have a monster. All right? We have a monster on our hands. We have a president of the United States that stands up and says, yeah, some of those people that were marching with the Klan, with the Nazis, are good people. That's who we have in the White House. So no, this is not about politics. That's out of the window. Unfortunately, what it is, it's about a tremendous national security issue wrapped up in hate, racism, and utterly blind stupidity. And we have to recognize that. We have to deal with that. This is a man, once again, I will say it, this is a man that gives Ku Klux Klan members and Nazis a pass. We lost thousands upon thousands of men and women in World War II fighting that horrible disease called the Nazi Party. And now we have a president that's going to sit up there and talk about somebody else's patriotism, and yet he feels absolutely no shame in saying that, yeah, some of those folks out there were good people. You had Klan members and Nazis carrying, as they say, long weapons, rifles, marching around a Jewish synagogue, making catcalls, and screaming that Jews shall not replace them. Now, this is not something I made up, okay? I did not go into a basement somewhere and go into a private little safe and take out my little left-wing liberal machine and cook up this story. This is what really happened. And you have a president that doesn't see any harm in that. You have a president that says that those were good people. The people that marched with those people were good people. Houston, you got a problem. And we need to recognize this problem. Now, on top of that, beside this guy being a draft-dodging phony, he has the nerve and the audacity. And let's get something straight. John McCain and me, one thing we have in common, we're both Navy veterans. But politically, we are definitely fire and water. I am what you would call a left-wing socialist Democrat, and John McCain is a rock-rib Republican. I think just about most of the things that he ever came up with, since he's been in politics, I have been against. But you know something? John McCain, in spite of how I disagree with him so much politically, John McCain is one of the greatest heroes that we have in this country. He is a living hero. And for somebody like Donald Trump to sit up there and practically poke fun at the guy because he had the misfortune to be captured and was a prisoner of war, which, by the way, he chose to continue in his captivity because he was not going to allow himself to be taken out ahead of other Americans who had been in that POW camp longer than he had. And you have Trump sitting up there making these ignorant cracks. And when asked, about his sacrifice and, what he was doing during the Vietnam years, he says that his biggest tribulation was making sure he didn't catch VD. Now you think about that. This guy is commander-in-chief, right? He just sent 3,400 guys to Afghanistan. And he's going to sit up there and talk about his biggest concern in the late 60s and 70s was catching VD. See, this is what astounds me about people that, okay, they voted for Trump, and now 8 months later, or 9 months later, 10 months, because that was November, okay, and make 10 months, what the hell, 10 months later, after everything that we've seen happen, the fact that some of these people are still going to declare that they are still sticking with Donald Trump, I find that incredible. I also find it obscene, quite frankly. Don't walk around beating on your chest talking about your patriotism, though, because that makes you look, not only does it make you look like a phony, it also makes you look rather stupid, quite frankly. Because you're going to use the word patriotism in connection with the man that spent his Vietnam years trying to dodge gonorrhea. And if you don't see that there's something wrong with that, I think you're hopeless, because that's telling me that you felt such a desire to somehow get back or punish college-educated people and people of color. You felt so hateful, because you had 8 years of Barack Obama there in the White House. And so that upset you so much that you just didn't give a damn. Nothing that Trump did would upset you enough to not vote for this guy. And that's truly sad. That is truly sad. See, it's not about people disrespecting the flag. I think it's about growing up. I think that that's the biggest problem that we have in this country. People refuse, or put it this way, people from certain areas refused to grow up. No, and the South, no, those statues should come down. Those people who you worship on those statues, they were traitors. They had good points about them, don't get me wrong. I think that Robert E. Lee was in many respects, he was an upstanding gentleman. But unfortunately, he thought, he felt too much of his heart and not enough of his head. And he betrayed his country. America gave him an education, gave him a college education. And what did he do? He turned his back on her. And he led an army in rebellion against the nation that fed him and educated him. Now, you can talk about all you want about the reasons and all this kind of crap. But bottom line, that's what most of these Confederate officers, that's what they did. Robert E. Lee and the rest of them, because most of them were West Point guys. But for the sake of slavery, you decided that you were going to turn your back on your country. Your state that you come from was not your country. America is your country. Unfortunately, you did not understand that. And you felt that it was more important to support a system based on human chattel slavery than it was to support and protect and defend a country that felt it was more important to keep black people in chains rather than to protect the constitutional democratic republic that you lived in. That was secondary in your mind. Keeping your part of the country enslaved, that was the most important thing for you. And for those folks out there that actually believe that slavery was going to die out, stop being delusional. The movers and shakers, the aristocracy of the South in the 1840s, 1850s, their big thing was to either buy it or conquer it. But they wanted Cuba because they wanted, which it already was, but they wanted it under the United States. They wanted the whole Caribbean and Central America going into South America to be a slave empire. That's what they were about. A movie came out, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago. It had, what's his name? Harris. The guy who played John Glenn in The Right Stuff. That guy. Did a movie about this dude, American. He went to Nicaragua, him and his buddies, and they took it over. And they wanted to set it up as a, slavery country. And eventually, he was overthrown and stood up against the wall and shot by the people that lived down there. But that's what the South had in mind. And quite frankly, it's a good thing that Lincoln did stand up after Fort Sumter was attacked, because the South at that time, that was their plan, to roll all the way into South America, creating a vast slave empire. And it's time that people realize that it had to take a civil war to end that filthy system of slavery that we had in this country. Now, what does that have to do with everything else that we've spoken about? Well, I guess you could say that what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to make it apparent that this type of person that we have in the White House now is a very serious danger. And if I do anything here today, I hope that I have at least, I don't have my clock on the on the screen here that we have at the studio today, but that's why I'm looking at my watch so much. But as I was saying, I hope that I have made you aware, at least tickled your curiosity enough so that you will, take the time, check out some of the things I've been saying, Google some of this stuff, so that will give you an idea of what you're contending with. Because, look, understand something. We are in a battle. Those of us that love this country, that want to see it